back for the last little segment of this 1970. So I've done. I hope you had a chance to listen to. We had some Joni Mitchell, some Kraftwerk, some Donny Hathaway, and some Nucleus. All 1970 output, and we're going to continue it. And we've been trying to do some interesting matchups here. Throw everything a little bit different. So we're going to continue that with these last two. And these are somewhat new listens, and then one of them, a mixture of new listens. Haven't heard that much, but also ones that I feel like kind of, are a little bit underground in one sense, and I really feel like they were a late listen for me. Let's put it that way. A very late listen into my life, and something that was like, immediately, just like, where has this been? So anyway, we're going to jump this off into, so far I've been starting it off very as like a, sort of like a cleanser, something just very, very pure sounding. So Joni Mitchell obviously covered that, Donny Hathaway covered that, and then I ended off with something a little bit more jarring, a little more fusion-y. So I had that with Nucleus and Kraftwerk, and I'm going to continue with this time. So we're going to start off with 1970, put out in December. The album Just Another Diamond Day, and this is the title track off of that, or Diamond Day. Born in Newcastle, England, influences the Everly Brothers, Buddy Holly, classical music, and freewheeling Bob Dylan. That's something I didn't realize. That was kind of interesting to hear that. So we had Dave Swarbrick on guitar, Simon Nicole on fiddle, Robin Williamson, multi-instrumentalist, and Robert Kirby, the string arranger. And the singer, and the song we're going to hear today is by Vashti Bunyon. Very cool. So let's do it. Vashti Bunyon, Just Another Diamond Day.
Just another diamond day, just a blade of grass, just another bale of hay, and the horses pass. La 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 la. Just another field to plow, just a grain of wheat, just a sack of seed to sow, and the children eat. La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la.
All right, I gotta pause it. This is going so quick. I feel like I could listen to this for 15 minutes straight. But listen to those arrangements. Robert Kirby, fiddle. I don't know what Robert Williamson was playing, multi-instrumentalist, but God, that background is just so lush. It's so beautiful. And her voice, like, it's not just her voice, but the way that they recorded her. I don't know how they did it, but I mean, she's got this sort of whispery, it's like they put the mic right up on her, just crystalline voice, just gorgeous. And this is I'll go into more afterwards, but I don't think this was this sort of just got swept under the rug, probably because there was so much other music to sort of that just grab your attention at the time. But I'll go into it more afterward. This is such a short song, but luckily we have the whole album, so you can sort of hear all of this stuff in the little ditties here and there. So I'm going to rewind it a little bit more and make this last. So here we go.
Just another life to live, just a word to say, just another love to give, and a diamond
that's it. You get all of this in just 3 minutes. So much effort, so much love, so much work. I mean, look at the string arrangements themselves. Like, imagine how much time they took. I mean, it's simple chord progression, more or less. But yeah, you get the sort of old school. Yeah, that's what I was trying to think of. Flutes, what the multi instrumentalist was playing. Yeah, he was playing recorders. There's a lot of harmony, a lot of lush recordings, and then the violin, the fiddle was in there, doing these sort of harmonic parts. But what else was in there? And the lyrics, just another diamond day, just another blade of grass, just another bale of hay, hoping the horses pass. Just another life to live, just a word to say, just another love to give, and a diamond day. Yeah, beautifully simple. Anyway, Vashti Bunyon. Yeah, so I didn't mention that the guitar and the fiddle were members of Fairport Convention. That says a lot. And Robin Williamson was in the incredible string band. So she had some great, and then you had the string arranger, Robert Kirby. So you had a great backing there with Vashti Bunyon. So I mean, this was like should have been fireworks. It should have been just a great shot, like a cannon, out into the sort of folk revival in one sense. But I think maybe the folk movement had already sort of blossomed and peaked, and so maybe there was some new attention, new trends at the time. So this album, and apparently this was a very hard to find album. This was selling for $1,500 in the mid '90s. Joel Boyd was the producer. He discovered folk pop icons Nick Drake and Vashti Bunyon, guided groups such as the Incredible String Band and Fairport Convention, and produced Pink Floyd. And he said, I signed Alvin Youngblood Hart to Hannibal Records in the 90s, which, if you don't know Alvin Youngblood Hart, he was, I was a huge fan of him. He was in the sort of country blues revival in the 90s. For me, he was it. It was, and I've seen him live. He's the one to see. Gives one of the most genuine interpretations of the country blues material, in my opinion. Just fantastic. 1997, Vashti said, I put my name into a search engine. The first thing I saw was a letter from someone in Sacramento asking if anyone knew what happened to me. So I wrote and said, yeah, I do. Most people thought I was dead. The album was like a collection of exquisite miniatures. Of the 14 songs, only 2 made it to the 3-minute mark. Compositions such as Window Over the Bay and Rose Hip November were enormously melancholic, brutally delicate. Robert Kirby's arrangements, largely for recorder and string quartet, were as apt and evocative as his work on Nick Drake's 5 Leaves Left, also made in 1969. After the album failed to stir any attention, quote, if anybody referred to my music at all, I'd clam up. I'd stop singing completely. All those years I thought nobody understood my music, and I buried it. That was Vashti. So yeah, really tragic, but beautiful in a sense. There's been a handful of songs that somehow resurged and found their way to the ears of their audience, in decades later, and it's a beautiful thing to see even them make their way, even if it's 30 years too late, but even more poignant, when it does so in that fashion. So Vashti Bunyon, if you haven't heard her, you just did. And I always, compared to other artists, I think she even said that she wasn't, not to be negative, but she wasn't a fan of like some of the folk music. She didn't like Joan Baez. She thought she was too strong for folk music, which there's different bends of folk music. To my mind, with the arrangements, Fairport Convention and Incredible String Band and Vashti's voice, like this is the farm country style of folk music. This isn't the protest music. This is folk music at its core. without the message. It does have a message, obviously. It's not a message for the future. It's a message of where we are right now, what we appreciate in life, and the beauty of the earth and the beauty of our where we sit into it. And so it's gorgeous. Anyway, we're going to jump into the next one, the last one, 1970. And, we're going to go in a different direction. I'm not going to add too much of commentary on this one because I feel like I'm adding it because of where it's going to sit in this sort of collection of 1970s music, and I have to add some jazz in there for what came out in 1970. And this was sort of a direction. This was for in its genre. It was taking a sort of different path a little bit for this period, and not the Miles Davis path, but this was May 1970. And this was Red Clay. Born in Indianapolis, influences Miles, Fats Navarro, Clifford Brown. So as you can see, he's a trumpet player. Freddie Hubbard on trumpet, Joe Henderson on tenor sax and flute, Herbie Hancock on electric piano and Hammond organ, Ron Carter on bass, Lenny White on drums. So you got a pretty power-packed ensemble there. So let's get right to it. We're going to round this out with something I've heard before, but it's a great production. Red Clay, Freddie Hubbard and band. Here we go. Okay. Yeah. Intro is fantastic. The lead-in is a little even more subdued than I remember. But obviously it's really where things take off and everyone starts to just open up a little bit. And the song really transforms into this sort of, tight, controlled jam. And as I'm listening to it, I'm sort of realizing like Ron Carter is really he's keeping probably the steadiest out of this, and obviously Herbie Hancock is kind of like, just poking his chords in there, really sporadically, and just his placement is sort of, it's not staying on the beat. He's sort of hitting those little pockets that aren't being jumped into. And Ron Carter really is just keeping the melodic sense really tight, and Lenny White to me is the one that gets to jump out there a little bit, with the rhythms and off rhythms and with the different drums he's hitting. So it's really interesting to hear Ron Carter just keep the pocket, and while Freddie Hubbard is doing his solo, you get to hear Lenny White sort of react in real time, which is fun to hear him. Anyway, I think he's going to jump into either Herbie Hancock's solo here, or I think that's where he's going, but let's check it out. I'm going to rewind it a little bit. What's he doing? All right. So like the tenor, Joe Henderson's going to come in. So that was really interesting because I feel like hearing Herbie solo, it was really, you got to hear sort of Ron Carter and Herbie really perform together, sort of like really mold and meld their lines together a little bit. And Lenny White subdued it a little bit. He kept sort of in the pocket because I think it felt like a really wonderful marriage between Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock, sort of just like playing around together. And listening to it now, and really like hearing Herbie in the moment, he felt a little. He really was like taking chances, he really was like jumping kind of all over the place. He wasn't sticking with these he wasn't building up this long, elaborate, really traditional solo, it felt like he was really just like playing in the moment. And so I don't know how many times this was like, take number 5 or take 15 or whatever. I'm not sure how many times they sort of play this beforehand, but he felt a little tight to me, until maybe the last 30 seconds, where he felt like he was in the pocket of something he was sort of knowing to do. But it was cool, because you rarely hear Herbie sort of not, if you feel like he's unsure, or he's just playing in the moment, and it's not something that's just seamless, just effortless, just virtuosic ability, which obviously he was capable of. So it was cool. It's cool to hear him as as a sideman in this project, or at least I don't know if this was the first album that he had played with Freddie Hubbard. Not maybe the first album, but as a group, I'm not sure where this stood with in this particular album with Freddie Hubbard. But it was cool to hear him sort of what he was doing in the moment. So it sounds like they're going to jump into the next solo with Ron Carter. And let's rewind it a little bit and listen back a little bit more Herbie's last efforts here. All right. That's Red Clay, 1970. Um, yeah, that was really cool. I haven't heard that. I didn't hear that a lot of times in my life. I've definitely listened to it before. I probably listened to the whole album, a handful of times. And I've heard the CTI version, live version of this that was with some of the same members, and I think they added Airto on percussion and George Benson on guitar, obviously, and that's a very lively version. So this is really cool. I really like listening to it now. What I notice more is that it feels a little. It feels a little it feels like it wasn't done a million times. It was a little I don't know if they took an early take, so it feels kind of fresh. It doesn't feel like it was overproduced or overplanned or overpracticed. The solos don't feel like they were, there was a sort of beginning, middle, and end. It feels like they were sort of just spur of the moment, real improvised, and took the sort of, not necessarily the bad with the good, but took the sort of searching and experimental and just feeling things out approach to that. So whether it was Freddie Hubbard, Joe Henderson, that's the one criticism I have is feels like in the solos, each of the solos, I feel like another member, halfway through their solo or 3/4 through their solo, another member sort of started to bring in, enter into the picture a little bit, and maybe in a sense to bring it back into the fold before the next solo. But it felt a little premature sometimes. In Joe Henderson's solo, Herbie Hancock kind of came in, and it felt like with a chord progression or sort of a vamp, that didn't really fit in with Joe Henderson's style. And I felt like Joe Henderson really didn't. In the beginning, he started off kind of strong, but in a sense, I'm not sure where he was going with it. And by the time maybe in a sense, he didn't have a lot of time to sort of, come into this sort of ending, make it feel like there was, he was finishing something to say, before Herbie Hancock kind of came in. So it felt like a little unprepared in that sense. And then Herbie Hancock's solo was really cool. Freddie Hubbard's solo was cool. And then really with the Ron Carter solo and Lenny White sort of finished it up, just sort of, bouncing things off a little bit there. That was interesting. But the Ron White solo, I don't know I feel like they could have left that out completely, honestly. I mean, he obviously brought it back into the intro again, just the bass line to go into the head one more time for the end. But his solo up to that point it felt like it just was in a completely different direction and just kind of brought things down to a level, not performance-wise like bad, but just down to a level that, it was sort of really just unknown territory. Like, I don't know, it just felt like he was putting some material. It didn't sound flushed out with what he was doing, which is a really strange thing to say about Ron Carter, obviously. But, as a listener, it just didn't, I'm not going to mince words or like the emperor has no clothes. It's like it just didn't, I don't know what he was doing. The choices he was making, I don't know, to me they could have just cut that whole part out and gone right back into the intro again. It would have been tighter, but it doesn't take away from the whole song. It's like whatever, I'll listen to it. Anyway, that's gonna wrap that up. So we went from some Vashti Bunyon right into Freddie Hubbard, some jazz. I guess this would be infusion. So anyway, this is gonna wrap up the 1970 marathon for this time. We're going to come back again because there's so much 1970 stuff, but I may touch the groups that I want to touch in 1970 in some other way. So again, I appreciate everyone listening to whatever extent you do. Love some input, and I hope to keep this thing going. No reason to stop. So I'm going to in this for the long haul to sort of explore this music. It's a music appreciation channel. It's a space for anybody's opinion and voice, and it's all for the music, all different styles. So whatever the audience is there, whether it's 5 people or 500 or 500,000 people. This is what it's here for. So appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next go around. Take care.